Do you want to start?
Sure.
Okay. Derek, you're taking another run at it. You were, I'm not sure what the proper word was, but you didn't have enough votes to get on council last time you ran. Why are you doing it again?
Dave, I was on council from 2014-2018. Fell a couple hundred votes shy last time. And certainly with the council members that moved up, I was kind of the next in line. But as you know, I've been involved in the community for, I guess about 30 years. I've sat on boards throughout the city, everything from the health unit to Nipissing Board of Governors, DSAB, YMCA Board. As you know, as chair of the Labour Market Group, as president of Rebuilt Resources. Many years on the Heritage Festival, when that was a growing concern. So I've always been interested in helping the community, even way before I was a councillor. So I just feel that North Bay is a great place. I think I can help make it better. And, it's a great community. I want it to be a great community going forward. I think we need some leadership as we come out of the pandemic. I think the next 4 years are important, and I think, I have something to add to the table.
What do you want to do?
Well, I've got 5 or 6 different, platforms, one of them, with regards to infrastructure, and I kind of call it the three Ds of infrastructure, which is debate, decide, deliver. We have, what probably will be some pretty important infrastructure projects going forward, and I'm all for debating it. I think a healthy debate amongst council, amongst community groups, but ultimately you have to decide. And then once you decide, you got to deliver it. And, we've seen in the past where there hasn't been much debate, or it's been a murky decision, or if we've made the decision, we haven't delivered. So, we've got a lot of things on the go, and I think that's real important. I talked about community safety. We have to, it's a fine line between protecting the most vulnerable we have in society. I sat on DSAB when we did the point-of-time homeless study. And, there's some pretty sad stats out there. And, there's some... I would never say I'm an expert on it, because, if anybody had the right answer, it would have been solved by now. And here we go, we still have some challenges. Now, on the flip side of that, I do hear from citizens that are concerned about, walking certain areas of the city, being victims where basically they're not really listened to. And, we shouldn't be in a situation where our sons and daughters don't want to walk in an area because they call it too sketchy, as they say, or senior citizens afraid of somebody yelling at them as they go down the street. So we have to balance that, where we take care of the most vulnerable, but also give the resources to the social agencies, law enforcement, bylaw officers to enforce the laws we have. And I don't think we should have people walking down the middle of intersections. I think, it's a danger to them. It's a danger to motorists. And that's not being mean. That's just being, someone's going to get hurt.
Get them off the intersections. Yeah, for sure.
And so there's different areas like that. And
but we don't have a jail to put those people that refuse to follow the rules. And that's not the biggest segment of the homeless people, or people without work or without housing. There's an element that just doesn't want to play by rules, and we don't have big enough jails for them.
No, absolutely, and that's some of the challenges we have. We certainly the psych hospital. You could say that till you're blue in the face.
Well, that's another segment. That's the mental health, and we've kind of let them down by throwing them on the streets without supports. And
yeah, my brother's worked in that field for something like 40 years, and the intention certainly was good. That when it first came about, and it was we didn't want to stigmatize people by putting them in institutions, which is what the psych hospital was, and we wanted to integrate them back into society. But there was no supports. So here we are now.
And no supports, but also no beds and places for the people who are beyond living in the community. There are some people that are better off not, right? There
Absolutely.
are some.
Absolutely. And there's all kinds of challenges with it. And again, like I certainly don't have all the answers, but it's been knocked around a long time. And I talk to people that don't like the low barrier at Chippewa, the wrong location. I certainly would agree with them. It's not the greatest location, but at the same time, you get into the NIMBY, right? And
Well, that didn't even follow a process. It wasn't tendered either, and that was rushed provincial money that was spent and committed to in the wrong spot at the wrong time. So that's an example where a process wasn't followed.
yeah. So again, it's one of my platforms. We certainly have to do that fine balancing act between those that are committing crimes and how we deal with that. And because again, Dave, you've been around long enough, you know how it works. I mean, the police respond to a mental health crisis or whatever you might want to call it. They bring them to the hospital to look at it, and then the police's kind of go-to as to where they go from there is he's not a danger to himself. Okay, bye. And so then the hospital has him. They don't have a spot.
Mm-hmm.
So where do we go?
Yeah.
And and like I said, there's so much to do with that issue. I mean, the drug addiction. I mean, the opiates. I've seen people that, colleagues and employees that decent people and just went down that path and just couldn't get off it. And it's sad, and they're not. These aren't what people would call a typical drug addict. It's just a terrible, terrible drug that hooks you. A friend of my daughter's that played basketball, Megan. I'm sure you covered her, Dave, when you were doing the sports beat, Megan Bissett. And again, just got on that tough road, after high school, and dead at 20 years old. It's a sad situation. So again, I don't have all the answers, but if you're asking me about platforms, that's certainly one of them.
Well, that's a really murky situation with the. There's so much we are just figuring out about those drugs and the opioids and those addictions, but the tainted drugs and the fentanyl, where these people are dying before they get a chance to even get hooked, right? They're just in the wrong spot with the wrong drug, and I think, and there's more detail that I don't understand, but the rewiring of the brain, they don't know how to fix that. It's not like a real addiction. It's not like the traditional addictions. Certain stressors apparently just make them make the wrong choices, and they just keep going towards that, right? So it's a mix. It's a really complex thing.
Yeah, it is very tough. Some of the other things certainly they touched on was housing. Everybody's talking about affordable housing. The province, a little scant on details right now, but certainly have got a bit of a plan that they're going to free up municipalities to be able to approve housing faster, less regulations, and depending on who you talk to, different groups have put out that we need 1.5 million new homes built in the next 10 years in Canada. I mean, that's a lot of homes. And, first of all, do we have the capability to do that? Do we even have the tradespeople to do it? That's one of the biggest things. But certainly I think North Bay needs to, be front and center in terms of, if there's, the province that they'll make provincial lands available for building. Certainly be able to fast track, the approval process. But, we're probably going to have to change kind of our some of our rules as a city, our official plan, to be able to accomplish that. Because right now our official plan doesn't talk about that many homes and what's required. So, And then, how do we try and build something that aren't just $500,000 homes? Like, I don't know, we've all heard about it and talked about it. I'm not sure how my daughter's going to afford a home. I don't know how your son is. I mean, Bank of Dad maybe, but the Bank of Dad's
not this dad.
Gone pretty,
not this dad. He's going to have to live down the hall like he was when he was a teenager.
Gone pretty dry. So, and again, we're touching on provincial issues, but I mean, as a councillor, you got to advocate certainly that we get in on the ground, and when there's potential for that, then we have to look into that. So, I also talk about leadership. We need concise leadership. We need I guess a balance between some new ideas and some experience. And I think that's important on council. And I've made a lot of contacts through the years, and I've both in business and labor. I'm a good listener. I'm genuine. But at the end of the day, you have to make a decision. You have to stick with it. And I'm not a big waffler, so I think leadership is something that I've put out there as one of my strong points, and something that I'll deliver. I touched on the environment. Again, almost all our decisions should weigh the environment into consideration, because again, when we talk about housing, how do we do sustainable housing? How do we do sustainable growth? I mean, I don't want to look like some cities in Ontario where it's a concrete jungle. I mean, you look at some where the development has just been over the top. And again, they're reaping the tax benefits. They're, certainly overflowing with cash. But at the same time, how far do we want to go? What do we want to do by our lakes? What do we want to do at the waterfront? What do we want to do on Trout Lake? We already have people concerned about the McMansions, as they call them, going up at certain areas. So how do we kind of balance that thing? And again, we have to listen to both sides. So that's an important factor for me too. I grew up with my grandfather on Trout Lake. Man, if you cut a tree, he'd be on you. And I mean, we don't want stuff going into our lakes, and the best developers still have make mistakes and have problems. So we have to really be careful with that. Not slow it down, but I mean.
Are you for some tighter oversight around the lake as far as enforcing the rules that are in place?
Well, again, I think there's not a whole lot more, certainly on Trout Lake, to get developed. I mean, we loosened it a little bit through the years, and I still drive around Trout Lake in my boat, and there's not a whole lot left, and so you got to be pretty careful. You got to be pretty careful, and I'm pro development certainly, but
I was thinking more along the lines of existing older septic systems being inspected in a more vigorous fashion. Maybe there's a number of things that I heard during the presentations at council that seemed like they were proactive and there weren't big changes. It was just tightening up the bolts a little.
Yeah, so I mean, some places are still grandfathered. I look at the example of ours. It was a seasonal cottage. The water, was pumped in from the lake, and the sewage went to a place in the ground with a little wooden box that had been there for 1,000 years. And as any person that's trying to be careful with money, we kept trying to get it grandfathered, but then we shelled out the $15,000 to do it. And the bottom line is it has to be done. I can appreciate somebody getting a $15,000 bill and being a little reluctant, but
more like 30 these days, eh?
It's 30 these days. Yeah. So this is going back a few years. So,
yeah.
But again, the last thing we want is things like that into the lake. So, and the other thing people have to realize is, when you buy a house, you have to be aware of, who owns the land beside you, and if it's zoned for residential. Because often I'll see people after they've moved in, they've known the rules, they've known somebody owns it, and that it's zoned for residential, but the individual that owns it doesn't do anything for a few years, but then decides finally to do it, and everybody's kind of up in arms.
It was green space. What hell? Yeah.
So again, I always said when you buy your home, just be aware of what type of development can still take place, because there's a reason that you enjoy where you live, because that chances are.
Well, the funny thing is that I, even though I knew all about that when I bought my property, I didn't think it was developable beside me, but I found out that yes, sir, it was. And even the idea of having one neighbor freaked me out. Right? What do you mean? I got to look at this. So yeah, I can understand why people put themselves in that trap, and also end up having to be, rationalize their disappointment in the fact that people have land, they can build something on it. There's very small buffers.
Yeah, absolutely. And people have talked about the tiny houses. I think that's a great idea. if the government can give some type of incentive for developers to build, tiny houses or whatever you want to call them, micro housing, I think that's great. And if that's the opening price point where people can get in, then I think that's great. Now, again, the reason that you don't see a lot of them being built, Dave, is there's no money in it for developers. So that's where I think the government's got to come in and say, where can we go with that? And I also think that you have to have some kind of mixed use with those, because I don't think you want an entire community of tiny houses. Like you have to, they have to be mixed in to neighborhoods to make it work, because otherwise there'd be a stigma of everybody up there with tiny houses.
There's a nice little sort of a template they got going on in East Fair. So there's about 3 senior villas, and they're smaller than what we would call townhouse developments.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they're just big enough for a couple, and a little bit of a yard. It's sort of it's almost like a cooperative as far as its build and whatnot. But I think
and the opening price point is.
They're rented out, and they have a group that sort of divvies them out. Like
Okay.
They're not purchased, I don't think.
Okay.
I think they're rentals. I'll have to double check that. A friend of mine, Phil Koning there, he's on the board, and there's 3 of them out in that. Anyways, it gives an option of for affordable senior housing. And I think, and it's like before you would go into an old folks home, or whatever the right word is these days. But seems to work, and I think actually they would work for young families too, right? There's a lot of people that are afraid of what you would call social housing, like on Manitou and whatnot, because it becomes a place of, if not managed right well, it's not necessarily a great place to raise kids, but some of them work out really well if you have the right,
I agree.
People. I think it's a culture change a lot too. I think we need to really look at the fact that as Canadians, we seem to want more elbow room than a family really used to have, and everybody lives in separate, so it's unaffordable in the first place. So we can't all have big homes, or a 1,000 square foot home, or 2,000 square foot home. I don't know.
I think as I mentioned,
progress.
as I mentioned, I think it's something that as a council you have to advocate for it, and you have to try and see if there's entry points for people to come to the market. Because if we have some good entry points for people to come to the market, we're not just going to take care of the people that are here. We may potentially attract other people, right? Because even where North Bay is now, it's still a far cry from the bigger cities and some of the resort communities, etc. So, we certainly got an MP that we can, or MPP that we can work with in terms of making sure we advocate. And like I said, it's a
Where do you sit on public transit?
I think again, it's never going to make money. So you have to. To me, it's similar to a library or a capital center in the sense that we're always going to have to subsidize it. Um, the province and the federal government had this gas tax for the longest time, and it was originally designed just for transit. So what happened was that was fabulous for Toronto, and it was fabulous for Ottawa, and then some of the bigger things. But North Bay almost did as much as they could for transit in terms of upgrading buses, doing this, doing that. I mean,
Capital investment.
yeah. And then finally, certainly the province opened up to things like sidewalks, bus stops, that type of thing. And that's one of the reasons why you see tons of sidewalks getting built now. And I'd always said that when I was on council, I said, people want sidewalks, and again, the province, federal government opened up that gas tax money, not just the sidewalks, but I'm trying to remember now, it's a wide variety of things you can put that gas tax money into. So, I think transit's, still important, and, certainly, is it used as much as it can be? Could the city improve routes? I know we looked at it all when I was on council. We had the whole program, and they put it on different things, but there's still, seem to be some challenges with it. But, it's still an important part of, the infrastructure of a community.
I would say so. A spread out community like this, if we don't have that,
yeah,
I don't know.
But again, if anyone thinks it's going to be revenue neutral, they're probably going to be disappointed.
Now, when you were mentioning infrastructure investments and some issues there and how to go about them, what was it? Decisive, debate, decide, and deliver.
Yeah.
Twin pad, Omichelle. Where are you sitting?
So when I was on the arena committee in 2015, 2016. All the committees that were very controversial, I tended to have to go on to them. So I think they...
That's probably why you didn't quite make it.
The council of the day seemed to have liked that. But so, we were presented with a variety of plans, and I'm trying to think who was on. I think Daryl Vinecourt was on it. Mark King, trying to think of a couple others going back a few years. But at the time, the best situation that was presented to us was Omichelle. We hadn't seen any of the details of the plan. We hadn't seen the what the rink would look like, et cetera, et cetera. Functionality. But at the time, with the fact that the city owned the land, plus some adjacent land for potential development down the road, a twin pad at that location was the best thing that was presented to us. I mean, they talked about Memorial Gardens, some real tough soil conditions there. Talked about having to make another entrance off of Fisher Street, bulldoze in some fields. And again, traffic issues, etc. So that certainly wasn't a great one. The university talked about one, but it didn't quite get off the ground. I mean, they talked about North Bay Mall, but that didn't quite get off the ground. So certainly at the time, that was the best case scenario, and I supported it. Now, the actual design and cost. Again, I wasn't privy to how all that came about. So, I'm going to have an open mind, Dave, if I'm elected back on council. If something compelling comes up that is going to offer us the same synergies as a double pad and can be less expensive, that's certainly something I'll look at. But I don't know. I hear people saying it's a long way to go. It's closer to this than it is to that. Well, I had a daughter that played hockey for years, and where half our games were? South River, Sunridge, Sturgeon Falls, Verner. That's a long way to go. So I mean, we need a extra recreational facilities. I think the basketball court downtown was a great addition, and I think we need a twin pad arena. Omashil was the best site. I mean, I've had some of my colleagues on council and candidates now talk about all kinds of other scenarios, from building it where West Ferris is. There's enough space there. The West Ferris Arena now. I haven't seen that, but I do know when I was Chamber of Commerce president in 2012, I remember doing a white paper, I called it at the time, and I did a presentation to council and the media, and I talked about the fact that Pete Pelangio, West Ferris were past their best before dates, amongst many other topics. And
10 years ago.
10 years ago. So here we are. So again, if a mayor and 5 councillors vote in January, newly elected council, to cancel that Omashil, then we're right back at her. So again, that's not to say approve something because you got a gun to your head, but at the same time, boy oh boy, I don't know how quickly you can find a new spot, get the same funding, and start getting it built in a time frame. So, I mean,
well, one of the options that are going to be on the table, and I'm not saying that's one I'd pick, and my counter opinion about Omashil doesn't. It's been so long, I don't care anymore. And that is not a bad area. That is going to eventually, in 20 years, be a lot busier. And once North Bay amalgamates calendar, right, and builds the septic system for that in the town, whatever's on the table. Anyways, the Trident design is ludicrous, really. Try to sell that for what it's worth to somebody who wants to build it that way, but just put a twin pad there and move on. You can take that out of a Cracker Jack box, that engineering. Just blow up some rock like we do every other swamp we fill in, right?
Yeah. Again,
I'm just joking.
Yeah,
I'm not joking. It could happen.
Yeah. No, like I said, when I was on council, that location was the best location at the time. The design, the price, I wasn't there for all those discussions. But I remember something about being 20 million or possibly 30 million back then, and now it's 52.
52 with interest, even though if half the interest wouldn't be there because the Fed's got half of that 50 there, right? So recalculation tenders at this point in time in history might be higher than 52 for sure.
But an all-around answer to that question is I do think we need additional ice surfaces in North Bay. It's expensive, whatever design we go with.
They won't be additional for long. You're going to be losing people, Angelo, and when double stinks eventually sinks.
Yeah.
And West Ferris, even though there could be some more bandages there, and you can hire a lot of people to shovel the roof there for $500,000.
Yeah.
But,
and again, it's I think the reason the federal government's certainly coming up with money, and the provincial government in other ways, is take a drive around Ontario. I mean, you've got aging rinks all over the place, and I mean these are ones like West Ferris that have been community centers for ages. And I mean, we've always concentrated on fixing roads, etc., as we should, the core infrastructure, right? But I mean, some of this sports infrastructure, I mean, holy smokes! I mean, there's some arenas that are being kept alive by a handful of volunteers on a shoestring budget, guys that drive the Zamboni almost for free, and again, municipalities never had any money to do anything with them, so now it's coming home to roost, and it's not just North Bay. Again, you go around Ontario and you see it everywhere, and the places that have managed to do them, like Huntsville's got a beautiful new arena that's fabulous. Bracebridge, Gravenhurst, and again they were able to get some private sector money from people down there, which is a little more difficult in North Bay, but and they've become huge additions to a community. And it actually makes you feel good. You can talk to parents where, I hate saying it, they go to other towns for tournaments and things, and they're embarrassed to come back here where, our showpiece is Pete Pelangio. Come on in, this is our, maybe our snack bar will be open, we're not really sure. And they go
run down those stairs with a hockey bag on wheels. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you go again to different municipalities, and again, we have Memorial Gardens, so we don't have just those community rinks to look after. Where again, your Huntsvilles and your Gravenhurst don't have any type of junior A thing, so that's their kind of showpiece arena. So we have Memorial Gardens, a junior A hockey team, and a university team that plays out of Memorial Gardens, and we have to take care of the other arenas with the same type of budget. So it's a bit of a challenge, but again, I'm hopeful that whoever is on council in January can come up with a decision that's not going to take another 10 years.
Fill in the basement of double stinks and build the twin pad out of Omoshell and move on to the next pro. You can use the double rinks as some type of emergency sheltering and housing and stuff like that too.
Yeah, and Dave, it's that kind of out of the box thinking that we're going to have to do, right? And I mean, it's.
I'm half jesting, of course, but you got to do something.
I mean, it's a big piece of land at Pete Pelangio, and they keep, depending on who you talk to, the best before dates, et cetera, et cetera. It's a great location, close to ball fields. People, quite a bit of parking when the parking lot's not full of potholes, et cetera. But
when it's flat,
when it's flat. And again, West Ferris has got such a great history too. So again, I hope we come up with some out of the box thinking for all of them. I've heard all kinds of different proposals, and arenas become such a, like I said, loyal following for people that have used it for years. Whether it's a ringette community groups upstairs at West Ferris.
Becomes historical.
Yeah, West Ferris upstairs. So again, those are tough decisions. But again, debate, decide, deliver. We are going to have to make those decisions, and the longer we stretch them out, the tougher they're going to get. And unfortunately, a lot of it comes down to money. But at least council needs to at least have a vision for it, and it needs to be council driven.
Well, here's a question for you that I know that you aren't opposed to the politics of at least one mayor as far as conservative, right? But Peter Churko is saying he wants to do a top-to-bottom sort of review, audit of how the city functions. Do you think that's necessary? Is the cost possibly prohibitive, and is it just going to waste time?
Well, again, I think it's and for all the mayoral candidates, I can work with anyone. I've always worked with anyone. I've supported Liberals, Conservatives, whoever throughout my life. Now, Peter, I give him credit for coming out and saying that that's what he's going to do. Because the worst thing you can do is get elected, and then decide you're going to unveil your platform after you've been elected. So he unveiled it up front, and he's gotten quite a few points in that from moving the all the department heads to one floor to doing a third party review of all the areas. So I think certainly it's something. I remember Mark King bandying that about way back, a third party review. I remember other people talking about a third party review, and I think for a city staff member, maybe that's scary. They think that's scary. But I mean, yourself, Dave. I mean, I don't see us. People are worried about their jobs. I mean, there's not enough people working anywhere right now. I mean, we don't have enough. People in almost any occupation. Not enough in the health sector. Not enough in the education sector. Not enough in emergency services. I mean, it's a tough go. So when Peter,
I think we're chock full of managers, though.
So I think when Peter talks about a third party review, I mean, it may be something where we need more people in this department. We can redeploy people in other areas. I think it's more of a fresh look. So I mean, I know it's probably scary to some, but I think he just wants a fresh look at all the departments, and just maybe we need another bylaw officer. I don't know. Maybe I don't know. Maybe we don't need a communications director. Maybe we need two. Maybe different departments can have some synergies. So again, I think it's a fair exercise. I mean, it shouldn't be the thing that monopolizes the first 2 years of council. But if it can be done quietly in the background as we get around to doing the work that needs to get done, I'm not opposed to it.
Good answer. I see you're wearing your work clothes there. Is there any news on that front that you want to share with people?
Well, I mean, Canadian Tire's having a change of ownership. Certainly we're going through a busy time now because you have to inventory the entire store. So that happens October 13th, and we actually have to close the store when we come in. So that'll make people mad. Because we hardly ever close, but we will be closed for that one day. And like I said, I have to count all the assets, all the equipment. And, the other thing, we're looking forward to next year is just now that everybody's gotten used to where everything is, we will be doing another renovation to our latest concept at Canadian Tire. It's called Concept Connect. And so you'll see some adjacencies change and, kind of some best practices and things that we've learned from our customers. So, there's an old saying in retail, I've said it before, you're either growing or going. And, we've certainly had enough retailers go. And Canadian Tire, 103rd year anniversary, kind of, an iconic retailer that's basically the last true Canadian retailer standing. Certainly I've been there 17 years, proud to work there. Certainly busy spot. I think we're about the 14th or 15th highest volume Canadian Tire in Canada of 530 stores. So, it's pretty good for a little town like North Bay, and our customers have always supported us there. So, yeah, it's always busy. But again, the old saying, Dave, if you want to get something done, give it to a busy person, right? So, I've always been all in when it comes to council duties. And always did the tough ones from Nipissing University to all the ones where you have to get in the muck. They don't get you a lot of glory, whether it's the Summer in the Park and Heritage Festival years or university when they're going through strikes and that kind of stuff. But I never backed down from any of that, and I was never in my mind worrying about, geez, if I do this, is it going to hurt me the next election and that type of stuff? Because you try and do the best job you can for North Bay. And, we had a discussion earlier. I am who I am. I'm genuine. Anybody that knows me knows I am who I am. And I'm not going to say things just to get elected. And if that hurts me in the long run, so be it. At least, I can teach my daughter to stick to her beliefs and, be proud of who she is and not be phony, not say things just because, they may get you an extra few votes. So, and I'm okay with that. And again, I hope people see that. And I'm one of the 10 elected. But if one of the reasons, I don't get elected is because, I haven't said exactly what everybody wants to hear, I'm okay with that too, because you're not going to make everyone happy no matter what you do. You won't in the media, and you won't in retail, and you won't as a counselor. So, the other thing I try to do with this campaign is a lot of the past counselors are colleagues of mine. Some are, friends to an extent. So my campaign's positive. I'm not going to start nailing past counselors, past mistakes, because I think most people on council try and do a good job. They don't want to be a bad counselor or be a bad council. You can have certainly different ways of approaching things, but I'm not going to be one to pound on the last council and say, you should have done this or you should have done that. I'll put my feelings forward, but and try to be in a positive way.
Well, that's refreshing. Like a cold February wind. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, again,
Well,
I know negativity sells, and I mean, I was at a thing with Harriet Madigan today, and one of the questions from the her Living Fit members was how do we get more positive news coming out of North Bay? And I mean, again, negative news or controversy sells, and certainly social media doesn't want to hear just the good stories. So I mean, it's a balance between the two, but that's okay. Like I said, sometimes what I learned way back, say less than what you think, especially when you're dealing with all the different groups in North Bay that you have to deal with as a councillor, and even when you're having some interactions with people, I have my opinions that I could share in private with yourself, Dave, or some of my friends, but in public, I think we have to, there's a decorum that we have to have and act.
Yeah, well, there's a lot to that. I think people could put more thought into what they're going to say and the impacts that might have. I've been told that I could do a little bit better that way, and I think we all can, but you really do want to have people feeling that they can give their opinion, even if it's counter, and work through those conflicts, right?
No, absolutely. And again, sometimes things get heated, and I hate to have a council that agrees with everything. I've heard, we had a great council last term. They all got along, everything got done, et cetera, et cetera. I think that's important and great to an extent. But I also think, if you can do hearty debate and each person respects, the other person's opinion, I think that's important too. I hate as a boss for years and years. I absolutely hate if everybody agrees with me. That's the last thing I want to have is everybody that agrees with my opinion, and that's what that's what gets a good organization when you have all those opinions. And I mean, I'd always want to have people that are smarter than myself doing things. I mean, I'm never going to say, the ordering process that we have that I'm better than anyone else when somebody's been doing it for 30 years and a great job. So I think it's important that we accept the fact that we can have different opinions on things, still be friends, still be colleagues, but hearty debate doesn't hurt. I remember sitting in capital budgets, Dave, where everybody agreed with whatever was put forward, and I was like, well, why are we all agreeing on this? Is this what we really want to do? And this is the capital dollars that we have, and I know this has been presented to us from staff, which is their jobs. But what if we don't want to do that?
Yeah.
We've got $3.5 million for roads. What if we think we need $5 million? Then let's take $1.5 million for this. And at the time, that approach was, oh boy, what's going on here? Like, we can't change this. This is etched in stone. Like, this is our plan. And I think more and more councillors are realizing that I don't want to say they have that power, but they certainly have the power to set direction. And if that direction is, we need more money for roads, then, the city staff needs to follow that. And if the direction that is, we need to, whatever, get a twin pad built this year, then, that needs to be the direction. So I think sometimes, because people are inexperienced, they haven't had a whole lot of exposure to budgets and how they work, they're a little scared, and the tendency is to rubber stamp whatever's put in front of you because, well, these are the experts and they know a lot more than I do. That's to a point, but at the same time, we were elected to lead. We were elected to set direction. So we need to do that.
Buck stops there. One last thing before we go. I just got my letter. I am got a PIN number. I can vote in the North Bay election because I lease this space here.
That's awesome.
I'm a non-resident voter. What do you think of that? Because I know there's people think that you got to live here and you got to own something, but
yeah, I mean, I'm okay with that. I mean, I look at somebody like Mark King, who's now living in Corbeil, but I mean, good grief, the guy lived here for 50 years. He's
still has a house.
Yeah, still has a house, and I mean, so he wants to eventually retire to the outskirts, which the border is like from here to here. I think I think that's fine. I don't have any issues with that, and and somebody that's been in business here for years. Now, on the flip side, do I want somebody, living in Sturgeon Falls and running for city council here and has a little piece of thing? Not exactly, not particularly, but I think the reason that that's in the municipal act like that is because of situations like that where
you're contributing to the property tax.
Yeah, and you've been a huge person in North Bay for years and years and years, and for whatever reason you want
have a stake.
Yeah, so you want a bit more land or whatever. So I'm okay with that. Ultimately, it'd be great if every councillor was living in North Bay, but I think that I don't think somebody that lives just on the outskirts makes them any less concerned about how well North Bay does.
Yeah. Well, we just had another 300 people from Toronto own property here now, eh?
Yeah,
something like that.
Yeah. So, but I'm glad you're a registered North Bay voter, Dave, and there's we can maybe look forward now to seeing you in 2026, and you never know.
You never know.
You never know.
I gave it a lot of thought about running for council over the course of the year. I gave it some really good thought, but I'm glad I didn't. It leaves me free to interview you and others, and with a little bit less of more of objectivity as a journalist, a storyteller, whatnot.
No, absolutely.
Thanks for your time, Derek.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it. It's always a pleasure, and I'm still not mad that you stood me up once, and I still came back, and Well,
I guess this is a good time to tell you, your ad didn't get into this magazine. I'm going to have to owe you again.